Marcus Thorne measured a person's worth by the price of their suit, until the day he discovered that humility is worth more than any designer label. The lobby of the Diamond Tower breathed an atmosphere of liquid power that ran down the marble walls and seeped into the souls of all who passed through. It was a modern temple where corporate gods made their morning pilgrimages, each step echoing promises of millions and the muffled sound of trampled dreams. Cold LED lights washed a scene of glass and steel, casting long shadows that moved like ghosts of late-stage capitalism. Marcus Thorne emerged from the outside world like a predator entering his territory. His suit was a second skin of ambition woven from Italian threads, every crease telling stories of meetings that decided national fortunes. His eyes, behind titanium frames, scanned the space not as a man who looked, but as an owner who inspected. Thorne Dynamics was not only his company, it was an extension of his ego, occupying 3 floors that functioned like the 3 lobes of his corporate consciousness. At the epicenter of this universe of haste and pressure, Arthur Silva moved with the ancestral cadence of someone who understands that true greatness resides in patience. His hands, marked by decades of honest work, glided over glass surfaces not as an employee following orders, but as an artist preserving transparency in a world of moral opacities. His janitor's uniform was his armor against ambient arrogance, each fiber silently witnessing the hypocrisy he scrubbed away each day. Fate, or perhaps cosmic irony, orchestrated the moment when their 2 worlds collided. Marcus, absorbed in the screen that reflected his own power, crashed into Arthur's cleaning bucket. Dirty water spilled like a stream of forced humility, staining not only the Italian leather shoes, but the very air they breathed. The silence that followed was heavier than any verbal accusation. Marcus stared at the droplets on his footwear as if witnessing a sacred desecration. His face, once a mask of absolute control, tightened into an expression of pure disdain that made several corporate specters freeze mid-stride. Arthur extended his hands in an ancient gesture of conciliation, offering not only a clean cloth, but an opportunity for redemption that Marcus was too blind to see. The scene drew eyes the way an accident draws onlookers, some with shame, others with the morbid thrill of watching another's fall, even if temporary. Amid the small crowd that formed, Carla watched with her fingers intertwined so tightly that the tips went white. She knew the stories the building's walls whispered about Arthur, about the sick granddaughter he supported, about the extra night shifts he took without complaint, about the quiet dignity he wore like a royal mantle. Marcus began his monologue of humiliation with the precision of a surgeon opening a patient. His words were not aimed only at Arthur, but at the invisible audience he always felt was watching. Each syllable was a poison needle of superiority, each pause a demonstration of power. He spoke of monetary values as if they were moral values, of prices as if they were principles, of costs as if they were character. While the cutting words echoed through the lobby, no one noticed the almost imperceptible smile that touched Arthur's lips. No one saw the wisdom in eyes that had witnessed decades of the arrogant arriving and departing. No one imagined that the man being humiliated was the silent architect who decided who remained in that glass tower and who was cast out of the corporate paradise. And at the precise moment when Marcus believed he stood at the apex of his power, he was, in truth, signing his own sentence of exile, not from the building, but from the illusion that a person's value can be measured by the price of their possessions. He thought he was humiliating a janitor. He did not know he was insulting the owner of the throne he sat on. The spectacle of humiliation reached its climax when Marcus Thorne, intoxicated by the rush of power his silent audience provided, decided that words were not enough. With a theatrical flourish rehearsed in 1,000 board meetings, he raised his phone and began to record, turning Arthur's humiliation into potential content for his social networks. His voice took on the didactic tone he used in interviews, as if delivering a life lesson to his 2 million virtual followers. "Take a look, everyone," he told the camera, with a condescending smile that never reached his eyes. Here we have a classic example of how a lack of professionalism can be costly. This employee just damaged a pair of shoes worth more than his annual salary. And what does he offer? A dirty rag. Arthur did not move. His body was bent with age, but his spirit stood inexplicably upright. His eyes, which moments earlier had seemed tired, now shone with a strange light, not anger or humiliation, but infinite patience, as if he had been waiting for this moment for decades. His hands, still holding the cloth, did not tremble. The stillness around him was more powerful than any loud protest. Then Carla, unable to remain a spectator, stepped into the center of the stage uninvited. Her slight frame seemed even smaller beside Marcus's imposing presence, but her voice carried a conviction that made several onlookers step back. "This has gone too far. Mr. Thorne," she said, her words coming out steadier than her trembling body. "Mr. Silva is a dignified man who has worked here for 20 years. He deserves respect, not this spectacle." Marcus laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the marble. "Respect is earned, young lady. And from what I see, you too need to learn that lesson." His gaze swept over Carla from head to toe, taking in her simple uniform, worn shoes, and the mother's bag on her shoulder. "You must be cleaning staff as well, right? Fine. I will teach you a lesson you will never forget." At that moment, Arthur did something no one expected. He straightened his back slowly, as if lifting a weight he had carried on his shoulders for 70 years. Movements that had seemed slow due to age now revealed themselves deliberate, calculated. He walked to the central reception desk, where a discreet plaque listed the building's emergency numbers. Instead of dialing one of those numbers, Arthur entered a sequence that activated the lobby's sound system. When he finally spoke, his voice was not that of an elderly janitor, but of a man accustomed to commanding attention. "Good morning, everyone," he said, and the amplified sound made every person in the lobby shiver. "I apologize for interrupting your routines." Marcus froze, his phone still aimed at Arthur, confusion clouding his features. "What on earth do you think you are doing, old man? Turn that off now." Arthur ignored him, his eyes traveling over the small crowd that had gathered. "My name is Arthur Silva. Some of you know me as the night janitor. Others, who have been here longer, may remember that 35 years ago I designed this tower. And 20 years ago, I purchased every square inch of it." The silence that followed was so absolute that one could hear the distant hum of the elevators. Several executives exchanged incredulous looks. Marcus lowered his phone slowly, the color draining from his face like a sky before a storm. "This humiliation you have witnessed," Arthur continued, his voice calm but carrying an authority that seemed to weigh down the air, "is not about a pair of stained shoes. It is about what we lose when we begin to measure a person's value by the price of their clothes. It is about the blindness that comes with power." He walked up to Marcus, who seemed to have shrunk by several inches. "Your company, Thorne Dynamics, occupies 3 floors that generate $500,000 a month in rent. Starting tomorrow, that amount will triple. For all tenants, except one. Arthur turned to Carla, who watched with eyes widened in disbelief. For you, ma'am, the apartment on the 15th floor where you live with your son will have 0 rent. It will remain so for as long as you wish. Then, looking directly into the still active camera in Marcus's phone, Arthur concluded, "This lesson, Mr. Thorne, is costing much more than your shoes. I hope it was worth it." And in the space between one breath and the next, everyone in the lobby understood that they had witnessed not only the downfall of an arrogant man, but the birth of a corporate legend to be told for decades. The story of the day a billionaire learned that true power does not lie in commanding, but in understanding that, in the end, we are all merely temporary tenants in life. The video meant to humiliate an elderly janitor became the final proof of the arrogance that destroys empires. In the seconds after the revelation, the Diamond Tower lobby turned into a theater of reactions in slow motion. Executives who moments earlier watched with morbid curiosity now avoided Marcus's gaze as if his arrogance were contagious. The phone in his hand seemed to gain physical weight, his trembling fingers nearly dropping it onto the polished marble that Arthur meticulously cleaned every morning. Marcus's expression was a study in psychological collapse. The face that had been a mask of unshakable confidence shifted through micro-expressions of denial, anger, fear, and finally a humiliation so deep it seemed to alter his features. The same traits that appeared on business magazine covers now twisted into a caricature of themselves. His lips moved without sound, like a fish out of water trying to understand a new element. Arthur watched with the same serenity with which he watched the sun rise through the panes he wiped. His hands, now free of the cloth, rested calmly at his sides. He did not need to speak again. Every word broadcast through the sound system still echoed in the minds of those present, each syllable a hammer striking the foundations of their certainties about power and hierarchy. Then the building's head of security, an imposing man who usually treated Arthur with polite condescension, approached with a completely different posture. Shoulders that had stood rigid with authority now dipped slightly in respect. "Mr. Silva," he said, his voice carrying a tone he had never used with the janitor, "do you need any assistance?" Arthur simply shook his head, his eyes still on Marcus. "I think Mr. Thorne needs a moment to process the new terms of his lease." Meanwhile, Carla stood as if turned to stone. Her mind struggled to process the surreal reversal. The man she had defended out of compassion was in fact the owner of the entire building. The apartment she could barely afford would now be hers at no cost. Reality seemed to fold over itself, creating a new dimension in which kindness was rewarded not in heaven, but on the balance sheet. Marcus finally found his voice, but it came out as a rough whisper, unrecognizable. Is this some kind of prank? A reality show test?" His mind, trained to navigate financial complexity and corporate strategy, refused to accept the devastating simplicity of the situation, that the man he had humiliated literally controlled the roof over his head. At that moment an intern, who had been watching while waiting for the elevator, did something that changed everything. Without drawing attention, he kept recording with his own phone. While Marcus filmed to humiliate, the intern filmed to document, and when Arthur made his revelation, the young man's fingers were already sharing the video in messaging groups. The spread began quietly, like a virus moving before the first symptoms. First in employee groups, then in business communities, then on corporate gossip pages. The caption was simple: "CEO humiliates janitor who is actually the building owner." As the news spread digitally, in the physical world of the lobby, Marcus's fall continued. His personal assistant, who ran over upon seeing the crowd, whispered something that drained what little color remained in his face. "Sir, the board is calling. They have already seen the video." Arthur finally moved. He walked to the bucket that had set the events in motion. He took the cloth he had offered Marcus, dipped it in clean water, and with deliberate strokes began to wipe the stains from the CEO's shoes. The gesture was so laden with symbolism that several onlookers held their breath. "See, Mr. Thorne," Arthur said, his voice calm as the surface of a deep lake. "What you considered irreparable dirt was only water that dries, marks that fade. What you did here today, that does not disappear with a cloth." And as Arthur knelt to clean the shoes of the man who had tried to humiliate him, everyone in the lobby understood they were witnessing not a humiliation, but a lesson in grace under pressure, and that true power was not in owning a building, but in holding on to dignity when one has the power to destroy the person who hurt us. While the video went viral, Arthur prepared his final move, one that would make Marcus wish he had only lost money. The video that began as a digital whisper quickly became a media tsunami that swept not only through social networks, but through the very foundations of the reputation Marcus Thorne had spent a decade building. In the first 2 hours, the clip reached 1 million views. In 4 hours, it topped the headlines of major business portals. In 6, morning news anchors were discussing the ethical implications of the Thorne-Silva case with the gravity usually reserved for geopolitical crises. Inside Diamond Tower, the environment turned into a live study in social psychology. Employees who once fawned over Marcus now looked away when he passed. Assistants who had answered his calls with deference now transferred them with evasive apologies. The same lobby where the humiliation had unfolded became a zone of awkward silence whenever Marcus crossed it, a silence that screamed louder than any accusation. Meanwhile, Arthur Silva continued his morning routines with a disarming normality. He still cleaned the glass, still greeted employees by name, still brewed his coffee in the same staff break room. The only difference was that now people treated him not as the janitor, but as Mr. Silva, a title infused with genuine respect, not the servile fear that clung to Marcus. Carla, the single mother who had defended Arthur, became an unwilling moral celebrity. Co-workers congratulated her for her courage, journalists sought interviews, and her immediate supervisor offered a promotion she knew was motivated more by fear of displeasing Arthur than by recognition of her work. She declined politely, preferring the dignity of her current position to the moral ambiguity of a rise based on extraordinary circumstances. Marcus, however, faced collapse on multiple fronts. His board called an emergency meeting. Major clients phoned with concerns about brand image. Investors questioned his emotional stability for leadership. The tripled rent Arthur imposed was the least of his problems. The true cost lay in the erosion of credibility, in social capital evaporating faster than stocks in a crisis. On the third morning after the incident, Arthur made his next move. He called a meeting with all tenants, not in the lobby, but on the helipad at the top of the building, a space few knew well, with a panoramic view that reminded everyone how small their earthly concerns truly were. When the 50 principal tenants arrived, they found Arthur not in formal wear, but in his janitor's uniform, clean and immaculate as always. He used no microphones or slide decks. His voice carried naturally in the thin air of the 50th floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his eyes moving over a group that included chief executives, investors, and entrepreneurs who together moved billions. You are here because you pay to occupy space in this building. But physical space is the least of our occupations. What truly matters is the space we occupy in each other's lives. You walk to the edge, looking over the city below. Marcus Thorne is learning a hard lesson about this. But this is not about punishing him. It is about reminding all of us that true value is not the floor we occupy, but how we treat those on the floors below and above. Arthur then announced the creation of an education fund for the children of the building's workers, financed by a small percentage of each tenant's rent. I want that 20 years from now, the children who study through this fund will look at this tower not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder that success without humanity is the most complete failure. And as the city's most powerful tenants listen to a man in a janitor's uniform redefine the parameters of success, Marcus watched from his window 3 floors below, realizing he had lost far more than money. He had lost the right to be taken seriously in the only world that once mattered to him. Arthur's final proposal was not about forgiveness. It was about a redemption Marcus never imagined he deserved. The week after the lobby incident became a case study in the fragility of reputations built on foundations of arrogance. Thorne Dynamics, once considered among the most promising companies in the technology sector, watched its market value shrink like ice under the sun of a media scandal. Analysts who had praised Marcus's aggressive vision now questioned his emotional maturity for leadership. Key employees began updating resumes, fearing that the ship was sinking and preferring to jump before the full wreck. Marcus became a prisoner in his own empire. His office on the 38th floor, once a symbol of triumph, now felt like a gilded cell. Glass walls that offered spectacular views turned into mirrors reflecting his isolation. He canceled meetings, avoided contact, and spent days analyzing the video that had destroyed his career like a surgeon studying an inoperable tumor. Every frame was a reminder of his moral blindness, every second a confirmation that the humiliation he inflicted on Arthur had returned multiplied by millions of views. While Marcus withered in his corporate ivory tower, Arthur continued his routine with a constancy that bordered on the supernatural. He still arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning, still prepared coffee for the cleaning crew, still greeted each guard by name. The only difference was that people now looked at him not with pity or condescension, but with a respect born from recognizing that true greatness often wears simple uniforms and speaks with calm voices. On the morning of the 10th day after the incident, Arthur decided to close the circle. He did not schedule a formal meeting, did not send an email through assistants. He simply appeared at Marcus's office door at lunchtime, knowing the chief executive would be alone. His habits were as predictable as the rotation of the earth, another detail Arthur had observed through years of quiet work. Marcus stood at the window, contemplating the city he once believed was his to conquer, when the door opened without his permission. His first impulse was anger, until he saw the visitor. His entire body froze, palms damp in an instant, heart racing as if facing a predator. Arthur entered with the same ease with which he entered any room in the building. There was no anger in his eyes, no thirst for revenge in his posture. Only a deep serenity that made Marcus feel even smaller. "Do you need something, Mr. Silva?" Marcus asked, his voice coming out weaker than intended. Arthur sat in the visitor's chair without being invited, his eyes taking in the luxurious office. "I have been thinking about our situation," he began, his words measured as if each were carefully chosen. "You have lost much these last days. Reputation, respect, possibly your company. And I have gained, well, I have gained the admiration of people who once saw me as office furniture." He paused, letting the words find their mark. "But there is something we both have lost, Marcus. Something perhaps more valuable than all of that." Marcus kept silent, waiting for the trap he was sure would spring. "We have lost the opportunity to be better," Arthur continued. "You lost the chance to be a leader who inspires by example, not by fear. I lost the chance to use my position to teach, not to punish." Then Arthur revealed his proposal. It was not about reducing rent, not about a financial settlement, not about any transaction Marcus expected. "I want you to work with me," Arthur said, and the simplicity of it was so shocking that Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity. "Not as a chief executive, not as an officer. As an apprentice." Marcus stared as if he had misheard. "An apprentice? Of what? Janitorial work?" "Of humanity," Arthur replied, without a trace of irony. "You will spend 1 month working in each foundational department of this building. You will begin with the night cleaning crew, then security, maintenance, reception. You will learn the name of every person who makes this place function. You will understand the value of work you have never seen." The proposal was so humbling that Marcus felt a wave of nausea. That is impossible. I am the chief executive of this company." "You were," Arthur corrected gently. "Your board will vote you out tomorrow. I know because 3 of them are my personal tenants. You have a choice. You can fall into total disgrace, or you can use this fall as the opportunity to grow in a way your financial success never allowed." He rose and walked to the door. "Think about it. But know this, the true test of character is not how we treat our equals, but how we rise after we have fallen so low that we can finally see the humanity of those we always looked down upon." And when Arthur left, leaving Marcus alone with the echo of his words and the ghost of his own arrogance, the billionaire chief executive understood for the first time that some lessons do not come with diplomas or promotions. They come with the humble chance to start again from the bottom, not as a dethroned king, but as a student who finally discovered there is much more to learn about life than about business. The month that would turn an arrogant billionaire into a man who finally learned to see. Marcus's acceptance came not as a conscious decision, but as the surrender of a castaway who finally stops fighting the current. The morning after Arthur's proposal, he woke before dawn, put on simple clothes he had bought at a department store, the first time in a decade he wore something not made to measure, and reported to the building's basement where the night cleaning crew gathered for the shift at 5 o'clock. The smell of cleaning products replaced the leather scent of his office. The squeak of squeegees replaced the hushed hum of his top-of-the-line devices. The first days were an exercise in physical and psychological humiliation. His hands, accustomed to holding fine pens and titanium smartphones, now gripped brooms and mops. His back, used to ergonomic chairs that cost $1,000, ached after hours bent over bathrooms he had never known existed. His feet, once pampered in Italian shoes, throbbed inside cheap safety boots. Every movement reminded him how foreign his body had become to manual work, how his existence had divorced itself from the physical reality of the world. Arthur watched from a distance, never interfering, never commenting. His presence was that of a Zen master, always there, always observing, rarely intruding on the learning born from necessary discomfort. He allowed Marcus to make mistakes, to spill buckets, to use the wrong products, to learn through weary repetition and accumulated frustration. In the second week, Marcus moved to the night security shift. Here, the humility was of another kind. He who once dictated corporate security policies now learned to operate basic alarm systems. He who had employed personal bodyguards now patrolled empty corridors, his only companion the radio that murmured updates from other guards. The pre-dawn hours were long and solitary, offering ample time for reflection while he watched monitors showing camera angles he had never seen. During those vigils, Marcus began to notice details that had escaped him. He saw the elderly cleaner who always left a piece of bread for the pigeons on the balcony of the 40th floor. He observed the guard who studied for university exams during the quiet hours. He noticed the maintenance man who fixed broken equipment with a patience that bordered on devotion. These were no longer anonymous figures in a corporate backdrop. They were people with stories, routines, small rituals of humanity that persisted despite the impersonal environment. The third week brought him to building maintenance. Here he learned about the invisible systems that kept the tower alive, the air ducts he had breathed through without a thought, the pipes that carried the water he drank, the electrical cables that fed his devices. Working alongside plumbers and electricians, he discovered that real power was not in commanding meetings, but in understanding how things truly function at their most fundamental level. An ignored leak could cause more damage than a bad decision in the stock market. In the fourth and final week, Arthur assigned him to reception. This was perhaps the hardest lesson. Marcus, who was used to being received, now was the receptionist. He who had ignored frontline staff now had to greet every person who entered, remember names, offer help. The role reversal was so complete that at times he had to resist the impulse to stand when other chief executives walked in, old habits dying slowly. During that final week came the moment of definitive clarity. One morning, he watched a nervous intern arrive for a first job interview. The young man was so scared he nearly knocked over a plant. Instinctively, Marcus stood, offered water, and calmed him with words of encouragement that sounded genuine even to his own ears. When the intern thanked him with eyes full of gratitude, Marcus felt something strange, a satisfaction no quarterly profit had ever given him. On the last day of the month, Arthur appeared at reception and simply nodded. There were no speeches, no congratulations, no graduation ceremony. Only a look that said the lesson had been learned. That night, back in his apartment, Marcus looked at his own hands, now marked by calluses and small cuts, and understood he had gained something far more valuable than any fortune. He had regained the ability to see people not as resources or obstacles, but as complete human beings, each with intrinsic value, each deserving respect simply for existing. The billionaire had died during that month, and in his place stood a man who finally understood that true wealth was not in what one possessed, but in how deeply one could see the shared humanity in every face along the way. The man who returned was not the one who left, and his second chance would be nothing like his first. Marcus's return to the corporate world came without fanfare or press. There were no triumphant interviews, no statements of reinstatement, no celebratory comebacks. His reappearance on the 38th floor was as discreet as his departure a month earlier, a man entering an elevator in the morning, his clothes still simple, his hands still bearing the marks of manual work. The only difference was in his eyes, which now saw the world with a depth previously unknown to him. His board, which had voted unanimously to remove him, met with him not as judges sentencing a defendant, but as colleagues curious about a transformation that bordered on miraculous. They expected a bitter, resentful, perhaps broken man. Instead, they found someone who spoke with a genuine humility no public relations training could teach. Marcus did not try to justify his past actions, nor did he seek to blame others for his fall. He simply shared what he had learned during his month on the building's ground levels. He spoke about the cleaner who supported 3 grandchildren with her salary, about the guard who dreamed of becoming a teacher, about the plumber who fixed leaks with a surgeon's precision. His words were not those of a chief executive reporting to a board, but of a man sharing discoveries about the human condition. Arthur Silva, meanwhile, continued his routines as always. He still arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning, still polished the glass with the same dedication, still greeted everyone by name. The only change was that now, when his eyes met Marcus's across the lobby, there was a silent recognition that transcended corporate hierarchies, the recognition that both had taken part in a transformation that made them equals in ways money never could. In the months that followed, Thorne dynamics began to change in subtle but profound ways. Marcus implemented policies that seemed radical in the corporate world: flexible hours for single parents, training programs for frontline staff, living wages for support roles once treated as disposable. Investors worried at first about profits, but were surprised when productivity rose and turnover fell to record lows. Carla, the single mother who had defended Arthur on that fateful day, became an informal advisor to Marcus on internal policy. Her apartment remained at 0 rent, but she refused any promotion based on connections, choosing to advance on merit. Her story became a symbol within the company, proof that kindness, in a cynical world, could still be rewarded in unexpected ways. The video that had once destroyed Marcus's reputation became a case study in corporate redemption. Business schools used it in classes on ethics and leadership. Organizational consultants cited the Thorne transformation as an example of how crises can catalyze personal and institutional growth. 1 year after the lobby incident, Arthur invited Marcus to dinner at his simple apartment on the 15th floor, the same floor where Carla lived. The meal was cooked by Arthur himself, with ingredients from the local market. There were no servants, no luxury, no displays of wealth. Only 2 men sharing food and stories as equals. During that dinner, Arthur revealed his final plan. He was transferring ownership of Diamond Tower to a foundation that would run the building as a model of ethical business: fair rents, dignified conditions for all workers, social programs funded by profits. Marcus would serve as chair of the foundation, not for former financial success, but for the transformation he had shown. And on the night the papers were signed, Marcus walked to the lobby where it had all begun. The same marble, the same elevators, the same lights. But nothing was the same. He saw not a stage for power and humiliation, but a space where real people lived their lives, did their jobs, chased their dreams. The man who had measured his worth by the price of his possessions now understood that true legacy was not what one built, but how many lives one lifted along the way. As he watched Arthur on the far side of the lobby, still cleaning the glass with the same unwavering care, Marcus grasped the final lesson, that true greatness does not reside in commanding from above, but in serving from below, and that some of humanity's greatest treasures stand in plain sight, wearing simple uniforms and performing humble work with a dignity no fortune can buy.